When you're new in your career, mission number one, don't go. The best thing you can do is get as many shots on goal as you can. Whoever is closest to the customer wins. And smart businesses, they don't put anyone between them and their customers. I think there's a much simpler way to think about marketing and branding that attracts customers than what agents are being sold. What really bothers me about real estate.
Today I sat down with a man who's on a mission to be the most useful person in all of real estate. And at the end of this conversation, I think you'll agree with me, he just might be. Jimmy Mackin. He's the CEO of Curaytor Systems, which is a full-service digital marketing agency that helps agents with their marketing as well as their paid lead generation. He's constantly on the lookout for innovative and creative ideas from both inside and outside the industry that agents can use today in their businesses. And then he shares it all in an amazing weekly email, on social media, and from the stage where he's often the keynote. I've considered him a friend and personal mentor for years now. Plus, he's just a really cool guy with great hair. In this episode, he will share with you strategies you can implement in your business immediately. So on that note, let's sit back and learn how we can brand it like Jimmy. I read something last year that said that 50% of agents, associated with NAR, were essentially selling one or less homes.
Yeah.
Right. So the goal of trying to be like every other agent or assume our branding, like, so do we really want to go back to when there was 30% more transactions and the average agent was closing 4.5 deals? Like, is that, was that the goal you had for your business? Like, or was it something greater? Right?
What do you think is going to happen with those agents? Like, well, because they've always been here.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the challenge is we look at the overall number, we just forget that, whether it's 1.2 or 1.6 million agents, we just forget that that's made up of like 7 million different people over a decade and a half.
Yeah.
It's not all the same people.
I was listening to, who's the new like CEO, president of NAR? Kevin Spears? Oh, yeah. Sears? Yeah. Sears. He had a tell. And I'm not sure if he gets picked up on this when Byron was interviewing him. And he's like, yeah, we had about 150,000 to 200,000 agents leave the industry every year. And so you think about it, they're having like, 15% attrition a year.
Wow.
And they'll, by the way, I've never seen anyone put out any data on what that is, but he kind of said it in a way offhand. It's not information they publish. Because all you see that number kind of steadily grow or steadily kind of like go down a little bit. But you don't see how much attrition there actually is.
Yeah, like there's churn. That could be 30, 40% of the industry, right? Like,
well, yeah, so basically over the course, like someone said, the real estate market's like your skin, it changes every 7 years, which is a very disgusting metaphor or analogy. But it's a little bit like that, which is like, there's a whole wave. There's a couple people who have been in the industry for a long time. There's a whole wave of just brand new agents come through every time.
I mean, I love this because I kind of want to get into that idea of like, okay, Jimmy gets his license, brand new agent, in your position, like what are those things that you would do to be sort of successful, right? But before we get to that, I'm just glad you're here with us. Like right now, we're together in Banff, Alberta, Canada. You flew up here to support a really cool conference. Yeah. And I think you sent me a picture a week ago. You were on a plane with Tom Ferry.
Yes.
And a few minutes later, it was almost like that song, The Day the Music Died.
Yes.
Buddy Holly, all those people that passed tragically in the 60s in that plane crash, right? Yeah. Got on that plane together. What would have happened to the real estate industry had anything else happened? Like, tell the story about that plane ride.
Well, today we had the annual conference for real, and I told the story because you guys fly a lot, I fly a lot. I think in the last 30 days I've had now 25 flights, and so I don't have a fear of flying until this flight.
Yeah,
like until this flight, and I remember when we were flying and we were heading into Dallas, Love Field, and the pilot. We were going to land at another airport. And the pilot turns around and gives us the thumbs up. He goes, "Hey, we're going to land in Dallas." So we were all like, after flying around for 4 hours, like, "Oh, this is great. This is great news." And what I didn't realize at the time is that when he said that, he put his seatbelt on, and he put his hand on the dashboard. And I didn't realize what type, exactly. I didn't realize what we were in store for. And it was just incredible, like, life flashing before your eyes type of turbulence. Now, to Tom's credit, Tom was cool as a cucumber. The rest of us, not so much. But I told the story today because I felt like there is in our industry right now, and you and I are seeing this, Brad. There are a lot of agents right now who, especially at the beginning of this year, everyone was like, what was the theme? We're going to get 5% interest rates. In the U.S., we're going to see 5 million home sales. And we all felt like, yeah, that's probably going to happen. We were expecting, I think, 6 or 7 rate cuts. Today, it's May 22nd. We have had 0.
I have seen all the Instagram reels saying, great news, 6 rate cuts coming in the new year. Relief is coming.
I think the thing that people maybe don't appreciate right now is the market that we're in. This may be as good as it's going to get for a long time. And when I mean long time, maybe 2 to 3 years. And so I think we're coming off the back of this incredible bull run in the market, both in the U.S. and Canada, and all of us experienced the pain of 22 and some of the pain of 23, had optimism going into 24, and it felt like that optimism was short-lived.
Yeah.
And now agents are having this sobering reality that what we're dealing with today is the market. The market is the market.
It could be the new reality.
And it doesn't appear as if it's going to save us. And so I think, and obviously we have all these commission lawsuits that are coming to fruition now, coming in later this summer. And what we're seeing is agents are now having to adjust and having to sort of, I don't know if buckle down's the right word, but they're having to put themselves in a position where, like, hey, I now have to have a plan. Because the market's not going to lift me up. I'm going to have a plan to survive in this market. And so this is where, I think this is where it gets exciting.
What's up, guys? It's Brad McCallum here. Sorry to interrupt the episode. I hope you're enjoying it so far. There's just something I wanted to share with you. Have you yet had a chance to register for BAM Mania happening October 18th at the Circa Las Vegas? Now, this is going to be an absolutely crazy event. We've got guys like, check this out. We've got Sharon Srivatsa, we've got Eric Simon, Byron Lazine, we've got Move Me to Tennessee, Chelsea Pates, we've got Neil Dingra, Tom Toole, so many more incredible speakers. And at a time in our industry when so much is changing, you want to be on top of it all, and BAM has it all. So it's going to be in Vegas, it's going to be an amazing time, and of course, at the completion of the event on the 18th, there's a BAM party. If you've never been to a BAM party, they are like nothing else. It's going to absolutely crush, and I hope to see you there.
I know this is an opinion that not a lot of people share, but I think there's never been a better time to be a great agent than it is right now, and we're seeing that today.
I agree. I got my real estate license in Calgary in a deep recession. Yeah. Now, Calgary is a bit of a Cinderella story right now. It's like one of the bright spots on a very depressing chart across other Canadian markets. It's one of the bright spots, but when I got my license, it was 2017, and I'd started to do some of those videos. I was starting to get a little bit of traction with that. Very early on, met an investor who had a series of different builders he represented, and they wanted to bring me in because he wanted to get some of those homes moved. At the time, only 1 in 3 homes were actually selling. And so I would oftentimes get the listing for the second or third time. So it would be like I was agent number 2 or number 3, and it would be like, okay, great news, we're going to go with you. We got 6 showings in the last 7 months, and there will be no price adjustment.
This is it. The price is the price.
Okay. And so we went from a 33% sell-through rate with the general sort of statistics in the market to us finding that we could get an 86% return on it. So 86% of the time we were selling a listing that hadn't sold in 7 or 8 months without a price adjustment, just by creating an opportunity. So for me, I actually prefer a tough market, right? Like, it is incredibly hard to get people to see your value if you're at a time when everything will sell with an iPhone photo up front.
Oh yeah, there's a Harvard Business Review did this study. It's probably right after the 2000 .com boom and bust. And that was when because we haven't, in the U.S. we haven't experienced a recession since 08. So now we're coming up on, the joke about recessions is, what's a recession? Something that happens every 6 to 7 years.
Yeah.
And we just haven't had one now for going on, which is wild, 16, 17 years.
Yeah.
And so after the dot-com boom and bust, Harvard Business Review did this incredibly intensive study, and it was called Roaring into a Recession, which is a great title. And they said, what is the right strategy when the market shifts? What should be your posture? What should be your plan? What should be the things that you do differently? And what they found was businesses that were ultra aggressive, that were foot on the gas as if, there was cheap capital and, that the streets were paved with gold, just like in the 2020 market, those businesses failed at a much higher rate because they were not addressing the reality. Now, on the flip side, the businesses that went into hibernation mode, many of them did survive. And this is the part I didn't talk about, is that, but when the market returned, they grew at a much slower pace.
Sure.
And so it's like, the analogy I think about is like a bear does not grow stronger when it hibernates, right?
Yeah.
It just survives.
Yeah.
And so what they found was the right strategy was a healthy balance of offense and defense, which is aggressively pursuing opportunities that helped you expand into new markets, grow the business, meanwhile being very pragmatic, very thoughtful about how you spend your time, how you spend your money, how you hire, how you don't hire, or how you lay people off. They're trying to say finding that balance, that constant turning of the dials. Those companies, not only did they do better during the time of disruption, but when they came out of it, they grew at a much faster clip. And so right now, what I'm seeing is one of two options, which is I'm seeing number one, agents who are just flat out checking out. They're like, you know what? I'm gonna kind of go back to doing. If I get a deal here or there, they're just accepting it, right?
Yeah.
Jim Collins wrote the book Good to Great.
Yes,
but
great book.
My favorite book that I read from him, and it's one that's not people don't really know about. It's not that popular, but I think it's his best book, and it's maybe my favorite title. It's called How the Mighty Fall, and it's and one of the he has these 5 stages of decline. And one of the stories talks about this idea of capitulation, which is you just sort of accept, to your point, accept your fate.
You recommended this book to me a year and a half or so ago. Yeah. And I remember listening to, I think, the first 2 or 3 chapters. It was fascinating.
Yeah.
It's a fascinating.
And well, the reason I'm bringing it up is that, so number one, agents are just accepting their fate. Mm-hmm. Number 2, they're like, you know what, I'm going to be conservative. I'm gonna pull back, I'm gonna cut my expenses, I'm not gonna hire new agents, I'm just gonna work my book of business. Cool, if that's your choice, go for it. But I've been, in just this past year, I've been probably 40 cities. I'm seeing the market there are winners and there are losers. And the winners, they are absolutely foot on the gas. And yeah, they're conservative, they're pragmatic, they're thinking about how to manage their costs and how to adjust to the market, but they're picking up market share. And I think what's interesting to me is that right now, a lot of agents don't realize there is a door 3. There is another path where no, you can be aggressive during these downturns. And I would say there's stories about this, and you mentioned recession. You mentioned you started your business in a recession. Just Google it. How many businesses that are thriving businesses that started in a recession? Google, right? Microsoft, Tesla. You go down the top, the top 25 companies in the S&P. 75% were started during a recession. So the point is there are opportunities in these moments if you're just willing to kind of open your mind up to it.
I found that I've always had the blessing and the curse of being just tight enough. Just financially, that if I was going to make an investment in something that was going to have an immediate result, like say door knocking, cold calling, those kind of things, something that would create maybe a pipeline that was going to fill further down the road, it was going to have to track back to some sort of business. It had to serve a client in some way. And so it made it so I stopped following trends. Yeah. When I first started, people were like, oh, really cool, listing videos, long form, right? And then a couple of years later, it's like, oh, short form, all the way. Oh, okay, now it's raw. Okay, now it's highly produced. No, now it's raw short. No, now it's raw long, chopped up and short. And here, I just keep doing the same simple thing over and over again. It's been in fashion and out of fashion all the time. And oftentimes people will say, oh, the video, it's so modern, it's cool, it's all those things. But it is that same meat and potatoes for me that agent is so diligent with their follow-up, or that is so diligent with their paid advertising, or so diligent with those aspects of their business that they consider to be pillars, right? That I don't have the luxury of trying and experimenting with all these other things. And so you get conditioned in a tough market to make your blows count. You really do. Otherwise, you can't travel too far from home without cover in that snowstorm, right? So you got to always be like, okay, I can go there, but I got to get back to that heat source, right?
Yeah. Well, there's one of my favorite stories is, and this is, I think, the parallel to real estate, is the story of Restoration Hardware. And Restoration Hardware, if you don't know, is like the high-end furniture brand in the U.S., right? They're probably now, I think, probably all over the world at this stage. And they had this, they were getting killed right now. They were competing against like Ethan Allen and all these other brick and mortars. And what was happening in the furniture space was that all of the furniture companies began to sort of like, because they saw what each other were doing, they all sort of act the same way, behave the same way, and they sort of kind of leading with discounts and deals. And Restoration Hardware came out and said, we have looked at the industry and we have determined that this industry is in a race to the bottom and we're going to choose not to participate. And so what they did is they were the first company, and they took this model from Costco and others. They were the first company to introduce a membership program where they said, hey, $120 a year, I think the price was originally, you become a Restoration Hardware member. And when you are a member of Restoration Hardware, you can basically get like exclusive access to certain types of furniture. Last time I checked, they are generating about $150 million a year off of their membership business. So before they sell kind of an overpriced lamp, right, or one of those out of the box coffee tables, they're bringing in $150,000 of what is basically pure profit. When they rolled that idea out, they got skewered by Wall Street. People hated the idea.
No one will do this.
No one will do it. This is, just stick to doing what this is, right? And people were just railing against them. And he's like, no, this is the path forward. It's worked for Costco. It's worked for Sam's Club. It's worked for other organizations. We can translate this over to our space. And sure enough, 5 or 6 years later, Ethan, right, Allen rolls out their own version of membership program. Unfortunately, because they were copying it wasn't based on principle, it wasn't nearly as successful as Restoration Hardware. And so the reason I share that story is because in real estate, like I'll tell you what I've learned being a CEO of a business is at a certain point, you've got to trust your instincts. We all have that inner voice that like tells, hey, we should do this. And sometimes, whether it's our competitors or it's our colleagues or it's our team, the people around us are like, no, this is not a good idea. Let's kind of like, let's not venture too far. Like sometimes that inner voice you have, like you can't defend your decision. You just know it's right. And having and you see it again with Restoration Hardware and many others, like recognizing that some of the best decisions, but also some of the worst decisions you make are going to be where you're doing it alone. And you're just going off of your own judgment and your own instincts.
It's interesting because we work in a little bit different spaces, obviously, I think because as CEO of Curaytor, you work with, and our team, full disclosure, McCallum Group, we work with Curaytor to really shore up a part of our business that for years we neglected. And I had focused so long on the idea of being a purist, that the view, the subscriber, the follower, it had to come only and always from an organic source. The challenge is that so many people that were seeing us on YouTube or in these other places, we had no plan, we had no follow-up. And so we had this opportunity, I think, to work with you guys and all of a sudden get in front of those people, more targeted, and start to experience, I think, some real benefits from it. So we've had a lot of success with it. So I want to say, first off, thank you so much for all you do. But when it comes to this idea of I think maybe organic or the idea of, say, value. What I love about this Restoration Hardware example is that I think as agents for a decade and a half, we've been convinced that any amount of friction and the person will leave. Like, so if you set up a PPC ad or a Facebook ad, and they have to manually put in their information, it's not going to happen. If you ask for their phone number and their email, people are going to leave. You know, if you just do the Facebook autofill where they, you know, autofill the information, it's great, you get more leads, but now the quality of those leads are much lower because they haven't taken any sort of intention. And this is, the purpose of this podcast is really to dive into this idea around personal branding. I want to hear more about your personal brand, not just inside the world of Curaytor, but even just your role, I think, in the industry. But what I find so interesting about this is that when you have a brand, that concept that we've all been taught, which is reduce friction for the consumer so you can capture their contact information and then hit them up, it almost falls away when there's this sense of value. That's why someone like a Restoration Hardware can charge something that generates $150 million a year in revenue because there's this intangible, this brand that adds to it, that people say, hey, I'm willing to accept the friction. I'll go down the rabbit hole. I'll do what I can to find you, contact you. I don't need the call to action always.
Well, brand is shorthand for trust, as Steve Jobs would say. Which is, you know, it's a busy world out there. It's a noisy world out there. We have lots of options. And so people tend to think that we want more choice. And, you know, there's the famous TED Talk by Barry Schwartz, which is like the paradox of choice, how more choice leads to more indecision and more, like, let's say, less happiness as an example. What people don't realize about marketing, and it's probably the biggest mistake people make about marketing, and I don't want to use the word marketing and branding interchangeably, but just for the context of this podcast, we'll talk about marketing. Like, marketing is the beginning of the consumer journey, not the end. And so however someone comes across your brand, whether it's they watch a video and they subscribe, or they fill out a form on your website, or they get an email from you, or they see a postcard they get in the mail, or they see one of your lawn signs, this is the beginning of the consumer journey. And so what happens is, I see this happen every day in real estate, is that people, let's say you generate a lead from a pay-per-click ad on Google, they're somehow surprised when that person is not overly receptive to having a conversation with you, right? Like, and so you
were just on our website.
You were just on our website. Like obviously you want to work with us. And the challenge is that, like, if you recognize that they don't know you, they don't like you, they don't trust you, and so everything you do post-capture is going to dictate and determine how that person is going to come back to you, how loyal they're going to be to you, as an example. And so I think from a marketing perspective, what agents have to understand, you know, people always try to get very clever with this idea of building like the perfect marketing funnel. I've been in marketing now for 20 years. There is no marketing funnel. I mean, the consumer journey is so random, so unpredictable, so chaotic. And the challenge is, as consumers, we have so many options that we don't even really fully understand why we buy, as an example. And so the best thing you can do is get as many shots on goal as you can. Getting in front of more people, right? More frequently, with better content that adds more value. Like, that is the only real predictable way for any business to try to attract new customers. And what I see is really clever marketers try to manufacture this. They try to, like, create this perfect automated funnel. And, like, that's just not how we buy. That's not how we make decisions. And so I think right now in real estate, what really bothers me about real estate marketing, and specifically, is we make it so complicated. I mean, we make it so insanely, and as a result, Brad, it pushes agents away from doing it. You know, they're like, oh, this is too hard, right? I'm just going to stick to what I know. And I think, I don't know about you, Brad, but I think there's a much simpler way to think about marketing and branding that attracts customers than what agents are being sold today in today's market.
Okay, let's dive in on that. I like that. In my mind, I couldn't agree more. I find when I'm working with my team or a new agent, the amount of times that they are sort of just confused about why someone would ever work with them, that distrust in their own sort of skill. And I'm like, listen, this is just purely like, get relatively competent. So just get as competent as you can quickly. So you understand some of the vernacular around it, all that kind of stuff. The competent will lead to confidence. The confidence will mean that you just won't screw it up when they're giving you all the buy or sell signals. Because in reality, like, nobody is going through a 25-point interview process with 5 or 6 different agents. They're just like, I think Ryan Serhant says it really well. People want to go shopping with a friend. And if every part of our marketing is showing us how we're a buttoned up, professional that's going to
Yeah.
treat them like part of our KPIs or something, we're going to lose that emotional connection with them. So how do agents, though, create emotional connection? How do they create a simple sort of process and demystify this idea of getting it? Like, what were you
So
kind of
I'm
leaning
going
in
to sound
on?
like Sharon when I give you a framework that I use.
Let's just pretend he took your stuff.
So, because Sharon's got a framework for his frameworks.
Yeah.
But the thing that I think about is this idea of can I, should I, how do I?
Okay.
And so, as an example, right now, when we're recording this podcast, interest rates in Canada are what right now for the average consumer?
Yeah, right around that 5.5 or so.
Okay, 5.5. And for my American friends who are going to watch this podcast, they have very strange rules in Canada around mortgages where they're not long-term mortgages, they're short-term. You have to refinance.
Yeah, this is a 5-year term.
Yeah,
that's right.
And then you have to refinance whatever the rate
Every 5 years.
Yeah. And so we would love 5% interest rates, but in Canada, that's actually high.
Yeah.
So the question is for consumers is, can I afford to buy a house when interest rates are 5.5%? And right now, if your marketing isn't answering a question like that, then they're going to, in many ways, are going to struggle to understand what value you're going to bring. And so this idea of, okay, can I buy a house if all I have is a 10% down payment? Can I afford to live in the house if my insurance and my taxes and my cost of living are X or Y or Z? And so when you think about the consumer journey, there's a sort of like thought, the initial thought is, can I even do this thing I'm trying to do? Is it even possible for me to achieve this? If I have a moderate credit score, if I don't have a large down payment, if my debt to income ratio is a certain level, like these are the questions that people are answering. So sure, if you get in front of them with all this about how the market's great and everything that's happening, you're not answering the fundamental question that they're asking themselves at the kitchen table is, can I actually do this? The second part is, should I? Okay, so let's say I can afford to buy a house. Let's say I can afford the down payment, I can afford the maintenance costs, all that. Should I actually even do it, right? Is now a good time to actually buy? Well, the answer to that question is, of course, it depends. How long are you going to live in the property for? What are your other options? What's your current situation with your rentals, right? And so if you're not answering that question, then you're leaving the consumer to figure it out on their own. And then the last part of that is the how do I? And so this is, can I afford to buy a house when my interest rate's 5%? Should I actually buy a house at this interest rate with this payment? And then finally, it's how do I actually do this? And the challenge right now, we were talking about this earlier with Tim and Katie, but the challenge right now for a lot of agents is they go for the views, they go for the likes, they go for the comments.
Yeah.
Which listen, it's easy to get addicted to that. To that validation. Like I'm guilty of it as well, right? But what we should be looking for, what we should be optimizing for, is impact.
So I'm glad you brought that up, because earlier we had a little race to 30,000 followers on Instagram, a race that you won, but I was more focused on impact.
Yes, that what it was?
That's what it was. It was not a quantity of people. I wanted to really make sure we were making a difference.
Just making sure, that's the connection.
Speaking of your personal brand, though, just for a quick aside, you have built, I think, one of the coolest pieces of copy to just sort of describe who you are.
Yeah.
And I think it's in your Instagram profile where you said, like, your goal is to be the most useful man in real estate. Is that
I'm on this is in brand strategy, they have a concept called like your North Star, which is, and so really good brands, Microsoft famously was put a computer on every desk. Google's was, organize the world's information. Behind every great brand, there's sort of this, call it, through line that exists. Like, why does this company exist? Patagonia is another famous example. They're trying to limit the impact that, clothing and apparel has on the planet. I think there's actually we're trying to save the damn planet. And so all the decisions they make are through the lens of that North Star. So when, I got to give a shout out to Annette Torres, who was my social media manager at the time. I was on Instagram for 7-8 years. I was not interested in it. I was like, listen, I run this business. I got other things to do. This is not that important to me, what I'm doing. And she's like, listen, you need to be more active. You're the face of the company. You're in marketing. Like, if you're not marketing, then what credibility do you have? I said, listen, I'll do this. I'll get out there and I'll be more active on social media, but we're gonna make one promise, which is I am only putting out shit that is going to be useful to people.
Yeah.
I'm not posting pictures of me on planes. I'm not sharing pictures of me, what restaurants I'm going to, because the conventional wisdom at the time is like, give them that exposure to your life because they'll fall in love with you.
Yeah.
I've never confused that the reason why people like me is my utility. Yeah. It's not my personality. It's not if I'm charming. Like, they like me because of the things that I do. And I've never been confused by that. So when I told her, I said, listen, I'll do this, but my mission is going to be to be the most useful person to follow in real estate. And Brad, it took me, I want to say, we've been on this journey now for 3 years. It took me probably about 12 months, maybe 18 months to get 10,000 followers. It took me 6 months to get 20,000 followers. It took me 3 months to get to 30,000 followers. And now we're starting to add like 5 to 10,000 followers every kind of 90 days or so now.
Wow.
And so I'm really surprised. I really am surprised by how much more impactful it is. And what's actually interesting on this mission is I don't post that much.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like people,
Yeah.
So I don't feel the need to be, I'll share stories every day of things that are interesting, but in terms of posting and videos and we've seen the advice on this. Post 6 times a week,
these times a day.
These times, I do not give a shit about the algorithm. Like I do not optimize for the algorithm at all. And this is my personal point of view on this. I optimize for the person because the algorithm's not going to buy anything from me.
Yeah.
It's the people who see my content are the ones who are going to
optimize for the human, for the agent.
I mean, this is, and I'll tell you right now, in marketing, there's a part of marketing right now that's going to get eviscerated. And people who are listening to this podcast are either going to agree with me or they're going to immediately start railing me in the comments. But we've seen this in marketing. SEO has ruined marketing for a lot of people, right?
Yeah.
Like if you're like, hey, what's a blueberry muffin recipe? You have to scroll through the history of blueberry muffins just to get to where the ingredients are.
Yeah.
Because most SEO experts are optimizing for the search engines to crawl it.
Yeah.
We're now seeing, as things are now shifting, we're now seeing this world where like people are just using AI and AI is doing the searching for them and just consolidating the information. And I think it's a great analogy. Like, that's your job as a marketer. Your job is to go out there, find all this information, consolidate it and condense it in a way that's easy for people to understand so they can make an informed decision. So for my personal brand, I've always said, like, I want to make it, I want to cut through the noise, give people advice, guidance, inspiration so they can go out there and get a customer. Like that's everything I do is through that North Star, which makes it easy for me to decide what do I post about and what do I not post about.
And it's clear from all of our interactions over the years, Jimmy, that you're a student of marketing, but not reserved solely to real estate.
Yeah.
So you look for those universal principles that you can pull in from a restoration hardware, from Netflix and Blockbuster. You gave a great analogy today about the story of Netflix and Blockbuster. Just to kind of round that up, the idea was essentially so many people get wrong about what the demise of Blockbuster was. They think that Netflix killed Blockbuster, but in reality, it was Blockbuster.
This is the analogy for teams is that, or for agents is this, like sometimes in order to take that next step forward, you have to kill the thing that you are. It's like the old the line from Game of Thrones, which is kill the boy Jon Snow and the man will emerge. It's to a lot of agents, and this is just true of innovation in general. This goes back to the days of like Intel with Andy Grove, is this idea of like, sometimes the reason why good companies fail is not because they didn't know what to do. They just didn't have the courage to kill the thing that they were. And I think a lot of agents right now rely so heavily on some part of their business and that they're afraid that they just kind of push a little further, it's going to change the way they operate. And I'll give you a great example of this. Let's talk about teams for a second.
Sure.
Because talk about branding and teams. I think there are so many team leaders in this industry, Brad, who would be so much better served being solo agents.
Couldn't agree more.
Right? Like, I mean, like because what's the career path in real estate? You become a top producing agent, and then you hire an admin, hire an assistant, hire a marketing person, go hire a bunch of agents. And the thing that you were great at, your superpower, being an agent, right? That thing you're great at, now you've minimized that. Now you're a glorified manager, or in many cases, a babysitter. you are less happy.
Or worse, you become a guru or a recruiter.
Right? Like you don't lean into your superpower.
Yeah, I
and
agree.
Brian Chesky from Airbnb talks about this a lot. He goes, when I became CEO of Airbnb, and we grew from this small company to this global brand, everybody around me said, Brian, the job of a CEO is to do this, be in finance, talk to Wall Street, raise capital, right? Like develop like high level strategy. He stopped doing like the thing he was really good at, which is developing the experience for consumers. And he goes, at a certain point, I said, the hell with it. Like, I'm gonna hire people to do all these other things, and I'm just gonna focus on my circle of competence. And that's all I'm gonna do. And so the reason I tell the story is because for a lot of agents, if you're a team leader right now, and you are more stressed, less happy, making less money, it's okay to go back to becoming a solo agent, as an example. And it's important that we realize that in this market, you have to be focusing on your circle of competence. What is your superpower? And the more that you kind of get away from that, the less impactful you are, the less productive you are, and certainly the less happy you are. And I think right now it's a little bit like a lot of agents right now are building other people's businesses, like other people's dreams, like, oh, this is the way it should be, versus no, by the way, you're in charge. You can do whatever you want. Like sometimes we gotta remind ourselves, I'm actually in charge. I built this damn thing. I can do whatever I want. And I think it takes a little bit of a step forward for them to make that step change. But I think moments like this Brad, I'm telling you, are the perfect opportunity to do something like that.
I've talked to a lot of agents in the growth of Real. I've had an opportunity to meet agents and individuals and teams and brokerages from around North America. And I was just actually kind of blown away how many times I would be talking to someone and we'd start to go through their numbers. Yeah. And they'd say, well, if we moved over here, this is what it would look like and stuff. But we can't really make the numbers work. I'm like, what do we, it's like, how did the numbers not work? And start diving into it, and you're like, so wait a second, you are committing about 40% of your own production to keeping this team or this brokerage alive. Yeah. And then you're afraid that if you were to add a fee or if you were to change the splits, that these people that are costing you 40% of your income would leave that team. And I love it. To me, it talks to the core of who those humans are. They're good people that want to run a great business and want to create a great environment for other agents, but they find themselves in a precarious spot. They're putting the oxygen mask on the person beside them as they are suffocating themselves.
If you have to subsidize your ego, it may be time to break up the team. Yeah. Right? And I think it's okay. Yeah. And if that's the only thing you take away from this podcast right now for the team leaders out there, it is okay. And I think what I've learned in business, it's a really painful lesson, and it's something that I struggle with for years. And it's the worst characteristic of a leader. That is the desire to be liked. Yeah. And so in leadership, if you take, whether you're an individual agent who just has a small group of people around that support them, or you're building a team or a larger brokerage, what happens is you start ruling by committee. You start making decisions based on, let me not piss people off. And what happens is inevitably, you not only piss the people off who would normally get pissed off, but then you, I think, repel some of your biggest advocates and supporters because you're unwilling to kind of draw that line of demarcation. So we're at a point right now in this industry where, you asked me earlier about if I was a real estate agent, because I've never sold real estate. Yeah. Like, how would I build that team? It's a fascinating question. I mean, we could talk about that a bit more, but like, there are things that I would do that are so different than what we're seeing today. And now whether they would work, I'm not sure, but like
But this would be the exploratory part that you would get excited about. Because you and I have had some of these conversations. Like, what if we did a coming soon campaign like this? And we try, and that is the stuff that excites me, is coming to a conference like this, or hearing a Tom or a Sharon or a Jimmy speak and thinking like, okay, you know what? Okay, I did a deal of the week, but wait a second, what if I was to do the text, right? Or what if I was to do a simple video? Like, what are the different things that I'm unique at, that's uniquely mine, that this principle that guides why this works so well could be applied. And that's when it gets really sort of exciting for me. And I'm sure from your perspective, as a newer agent, how would you devote that time to not just sort of getting that core competency in place. But how would you devote your time to either creating content, to paid, all that stuff? I'd love to see.
So if I was an agent, let's say tomorrow I got my real estate license,
Yes.
and I was on your team, right?
Perfect.
And
That sounds great.
You're my team leader.
The splits, Jimmy,
Let's talk about that.
They're not great, but if you sell a lot, you know, it'll be okay.
The first thing I would do is I'd recognize that real estate is a function of how well known you are in your local area. Absolutely. And so I would look for, there's an expression in business called be a barnacle on a whale. I would find built-in distribution channels where there's already a network that exists, and I can tap into that network to grow my brand recognition, where I can grow my exposure, where I can make new connections. Now, as an entrepreneur, the thing that I would do, and this is the mistake I made early, is I hired, when I first built Curaytor with my partners, we hired only junior people. And experienced entrepreneurs do the exact opposite. They hire, the first hires, they hire our experienced people who then, right, build the teams around them. The first role I would hire what I refer to as a community manager. In this role, all they do is they say, Nextdoor, Facebook groups, local, BNIs, all they do is identify rooms that I need to be in, connections I need to make. They're active on social media. They're connecting with consumers. And they're just, hey, Jimmy, this person's looking for a plumber. And I would say, here's their number. I'd reach out and make a connection. Hey, Jimmy, there's an event going on in a local area supporting some local charity. I'm showing up. I'm shaking hands. I'm kissing babies.
This is good.
Like all this person does all day long is make sure that I'm in the right rooms at the right time. So the first thing I'm doing is I'm building relationships from day one, but I'm not the one who is sourcing the relationships. I'm the one who's making the relationship. So I have this community manager around me who is the only job, and this goes back to Peter Thiel when he ran PayPal. And the reason why, if you go back and look at PayPal's story, Brad, there's a book written called PayPal Mafia. And if you look at the people who are PayPal, who came out of that PayPal class, Reid Hoffman, LinkedIn, the guys over there who created YouTube came from PayPal. David Sachs, who started Yammer and a bunch of other companies, came from PayPal. Keith Robios came from PayPal. Elon Musk, his company X,
I know that guy.
Right? Yeah. His company got acquired by PayPal. Yeah. They couldn't stand him, so they kicked him out of the company, but he still owned a good chunk of it. It was the density of talent was mind-blowing. And so Peter Thiel had this sort of management philosophy. He goes, one job, right? One person, one job. All you do is this one thing. All you do is just so if you're managing, let's say infrastructure, you do infrastructure. If you're doing, let's say partnerships, it's just partnerships. Real estate, we have one person with 50 jobs. And we're surprised when they do a shitty job, or we're like, oh, they're like underperforming. And so the reason I bring it up, if I'm a agent on the McCallum groups, right? If I'm an agent on your team, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna start building my sort of team of individuals around me. So I got my community manager. As I start building relationships, closing deals, what's the first thing that we do? We ignore our SOI, right?
Yeah.
If I helped somebody 3 months ago, 6 months ago, am I really staying in touch with that individual?
Yeah.
And so what a lot of people do in real estate, and we've done this too, is you hire an ISA and they call leads, they circle dial for you, they call your PPC leads. I would do an ISA for my SOI, which is after, so this person's only job is to manage post-transaction. So when a deal closes, this person is like they're a care bear. They're hey, it's Bob checking in with you. I know it's been 3 months since you bought the house. How's it going? How are you? This person is the exact opposite of a salesperson. This person, I'm not sure where they'd be on a disc profile, but this is a person that loves human beings and just making sure we maintain that connection. I would measure the success of that role based on the number of repeat customers I get and the number of referrals I generate. It'd be an easy line of tracking. Am I getting more referrals because of my care bear who's managing my SOI? So right out of the gates, if you can imagine, at this point, again, I now have 2 employees, okay? As a solo agent. So I got to get on my horse. I got my community manager who's on Nextdoor, who's on Facebook groups, who is on social media, interacting with people. They're getting me in the rooms. I'm building my relationships. Then on the back end of it, I've got my, call it ISA for my SOI, who's making sure that nobody falls through the cracks. And so those 2 roles around me put me in a position where I'm always creating new relationships and maintaining existing ones. Yeah. The problem is a lot of agents who are watching this right now don't have anybody to support them, right? And they're so focused on just new customers, or they're so focused on, let's say, marketing. They had this leaky bucket.
Yeah.
And all we got to do is pour more water into it. No, fix the bucket first, right? As an example.
Or to keep the water in it, we're going to write 23 email sequences to go out every Monday for the next 6 months.
Yep.
Right. And they lose that sense of actual care.
Yeah. And I got a third role I'm hiring.
Okay.
So the team now.
I like this.
So now I'm like, now you and I are sitting down and we're having a conversation. Should I leave the team?
You're
now?
looking for a closer. You're looking for a closer. You're looking for someone, a pretty face.
Well,
Is it?
No, this is a role that I think I think is, when you think about creating content, like good marketing is free advertising that people love.
Yeah.
That's what good marketing is. It's free advertising that people love. And the challenge with creating great content, if you will, is that it is incredibly difficult to identify what are the things that are really going to resonate with consumers. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to hire not a social media manager, not a videographer, not someone to basically manage my to-do list. I'm going to hire a bona fide research assistant. And that person's job is to help me identify what is important to consumers right now, and to feed the data, the stories, the sentiment to me, so that when I do get in front of a camera, or when I'm posting something on social media, or I'm writing an email, I've got this person has already spoon-fed this information to me. And my partner, Chris, and I used to talk about this idea, which is let the talent be the talent. So if I'm good in front of the camera, I'm good with customers, I'm good with prospects, how do the people around me support me? And how do they make sure that I'm just always operating in my kind of circle of competence, if you will. So as a solo agent that now has 3 people around me, none of them are buyer's agents, none of them are TCs or those are like, that type of stuff is you need to have it. It's important, it matters, but it's undifferentiated. Meaning if you have a great TC, cool. Most good teams have a great TC.
Yeah.
You've got to have it. And a good team has that already built in. I'm looking to have, if you can imagine here, Brad, I'm looking to have an org chart that is unlike any other org chart in real estate, because your org chart dictates your output, right? So just out of the gates, now, am I going to sell any real estate? I don't know, but I know for sure as an agent, I'm going to be in the right rooms. I'm going to maintain those relationships, and I'm going to be doing things so differently that people are going to actually pay attention.
As an agent, I would say, who has experience in these worlds, I would say that this makes a lot of sense for a lot of reasons. And I think you could distill all of that down to that same philosophy behind those words that you chose about being most useful, saying, hey, it's not about me, it's not my personality. I've just always realized, will people get something from this? Are they taking more from this relationship than I am? That is the exact same sort of philosophy I've always had. I'm like, I'm more than happy to give if it's 55, 51, 60%.
Yeah.
If it's 60% that I'm giving, I just want my 40.
Yeah, sure.
It can't be less than 40.
Yeah.
But I'm more than happy to always be the one who's giving that little bit more than what someone else is willing to part with.
Yeah.
The biggest opportunity is in the person that wants to do that little bit more, differentiate. And so, you hire a community manager that at its core, that's someone who's trying to be useful to the people in those connections, right? Someone needs something. They can trace this back to Jimmy being the person that did that. Now, you can get to I've never been someone who's focused on ROI.
Yeah.
Now, I know you live in a different world a little bit, where agents will come back and say, well, we spent this much on this ad campaign. How does it all work? I've always been sort of the opposite. I figure the more that I focus on the ROI, the more I miss everything. I miss the mark.
Yeah.
When I really think about just the absolute core of this business, which is conversations, helping people, just those real basic human to human things, I find that everything else will be just fine.
I'll tell you in your audience a secret here. Curaytor within the next probably 12 months will reach a major milestone. We will have generated over $100 million of revenue since we started the company. And thank you. We started the company when we made our initial return on capital. We put $1,200 into the business to start it, and so we got here early on, because we were very lucky, we caught some trends that we didn't realize.
So it's a little early to get in. Like it's a little late for me to get in.
Yeah,
now, okay.
Well, well now I'm on your team now, so we can talk about some collaboration.
That's right.
But as a company, I'll tell you, when I was at my least happy, because you go through these phases, right? Mark Andreessen has a great line. He goes, startups, you only have 2 emotions, euphoria and terror. That's it. And I think it's true for real estate. It's euphoria and terror. When I was at my least happiest, it was when I was constantly focused on hitting the numbers, right? Which is like how many new customers we have, what was our churn rate this month, how many MQLs did we generate? And it became looking at spreadsheets, looking at dashboards in HubSpot. And I'm like, at a certain point, we forgot why we exist in this world is to build some cool shit that people love.
Yes.
And so, I think this is one of my hopefully a lesson for your audience here is the numbers will take care of themselves. Now, yes, you can optimize them, you can turn dials, but that's not why you got into this business, is to increase your profit margins from 18% to 19.5%.
Yeah.
You got in this business to do some cool shit, to help some people. And so I have to remind myself often, because it's very easy to get addicted to hitting your performance goals, right? It's very easy to fall into that trap. And what it is, it's a sort of this sort of false signal. The more you pursue it, the harder it gets, right? And it's like you kind of just chase it, and you're chasing it. And so I got a crazy out of the box idea for the audience here as we talk about this idea of building the Jimmy Mackin real estate empire. But it's like, I think for a lot of people right now, they have to get back to that part, that passion, that excitement, that energy around if you talk to people who've been selling real estate for a long time, Brad, and you know this firsthand, when are you happiest? Is it cashing the commission check, or is your client saying, hey, Brad, I didn't think it's gonna be possible. You got me an amazing deal. Thank you so much. That feeling when you get home at night, right, is worth so much more long-term than any commission you're gonna get. Because that's what we're here for, is we're here to have some purpose and deliver something of value to people. And you wanna be proud of the work that you do.
Completely.
Right? And so I say all of that to say, yes, we all wanna grow. Yes, we all wanna make money. We're all capitalists. But the more you pursue that as your North Star, the harder it gets and the less happy you become. So on that note, as we're talking about this idea of building the team, I'll tell you an idea I have, and I want you to react to this, okay? You can cut this from the podcast if it's a terrible idea. But I think part of being successful in this industry is, how do you turn sweat equity into check equity? How do you go?
Do not say billboards. We're not going down. Okay. Okay, good. We would cut that from the podcast. Sweat equity into
check equity. How do you take the money that you are making from the work you're doing and turn it into assets that don't require you to be there working on it? And the question I have for you is this. In real estate, the natural extension for most real estate agents is to, once you build a team, build a brokerage, is to start working in ancillary businesses like mortgage and title and insurance. My question is that it's probably, a $250 billion total addressable market of all these other businesses that support real estate. Why aren't any agents buying into, not starting, but buying into the home services part of the business, where that's handymans, plumbers, right? You go to contractors, you go down the list.
Is this called vertical integration, where you have these pieces?
Yeah, I don't know if it's horizontal or vertical.
Yeah.
I did not graduate college, but this idea of because what I've always thought is, if I ran a real estate team, my first order of business was to make sure I'm monetizing my ecosystem, making sure that I'm like, hey, there's a great line I heard recently, I love it. The guy said, if you want to know the secret to investing, he goes, invest in your P&L. Yeah. Where are you spending money, where you're happy to spend the money or it's a necessity, and why are you owning part of that? So as a homeowner, you have to hire contractors, you have to hire plumbers, you have to hire people to sort of mow your lawn if you're doing things like that. Why don't real estate agents or real estate teams or real estate brokerages start to invest in these other ancillary businesses that are A, great referral partners, and B, just businesses that keep you closer to the consumer?
I know a lot of great teams that a core part of one of the most profitable parts of the business is their escrow company.
Yeah.
So they'll have, in effect, a like most teams and like most brokerages even, a low margin business.
Yeah.
Where it's going to take a lot of transactions for them to hit their numbers, but if they had that ancillary service, that other piece that could help draw a little bit more profit out, that's actually where the juice is. But for me, long before I was in real estate, I had a passion for like home design, and I still absolutely love it. But I realized that, hey, I didn't go to architecture school. Is that a thing?
Yeah.
Or design school?
Most certainly is.
Yes, okay. And I'm not a structural engineer, but I had some basic concepts around it. And I had taste. Like, that was it. It was just like I had a taste that the clients kind of liked. They liked my, like, hey, what if we did this or that, this approach? But the only way I could get someone to hire me as a designer was if I could actually perform the service of the renovation or the addition. Like, there had to be, they could only quantify what that value was when they could see it.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes, right, in our real estate businesses, we need to find things that we can leverage.
Yeah.
One, if we're not in a position to maybe, buy into some of these ancillary services or invest in that, when everyone told me early on, I don't know how on earth you could spend so much time and so much money, promoting a property or, doing the sweat equity of creating the video and shooting it and teaching yourself how to edit and all those pieces. What I couldn't understand is how much they were missing the mark. Like, how do you not understand all the different points of leverage? Like, if I, to this day, looked back and said, what's the true value of a listing video, I would still struggle to find how the return on investment made sense in a market where most homes are selling.
Yeah.
Where most homes do sell on price. But yet, for some reason, it still seems to be all of the difference in the world. It doesn't show up as easy on a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
But that intangible, that piece that adds to it, it leads to conversations. It leads to really easy, natural conversions. Someone walks into an open house and you say, hey, did you get a chance to see the video on it? Oh no, haven't seen the video. Oh, you know what? Do you think your spouse is going to be kind of curious about the house if you like it? Oh yeah. Do you mind if I'll send you the video? Now, instead of asking them for some sign-up sheet, which is clearly what's in it for me, it's now about them.
Well, one of the easiest ways to quantify brand, because I know this podcast is about branding, is if you want to try to quantify the value of a brand, imagine it in the absence of it. So if you have no brand, okay, what actually now becomes true? Well, what becomes now true is that sales has to do all the heavy lifting.
Yeah.
And so if you're trying to say, okay, let's say I have no videos, I have no brand, I have no reviews online, people don't know who I am, I have no advertising campaigns. Okay, so that means right now in Canada there's 150,000 real estate agents, which is mind-blowing, right? Toronto, by the way, has 70,000. I mean, 1,000 Watt, which is wild. 1,000 Watt put out a study about this recently. They found that the average consumer knows more than 5 real estate agents. So right out of the gates, we are in this red ocean, hyper-competitive market, especially in a market where there's declining sales. It now is becoming, as we call it, the Hunger Games. So in the absence of a brand, what now becomes true? Now sales has to do all the heavy lifting. So now you got to make more phone calls. You got to knock on more doors. You got to start doing what I would call unscalable activities.
Yeah.
Things like, so you can get good at these things, but the thing about marketing, and this is what you want to find that balance, Brad. I think you guys have done a really good job with this, is when you're early, like when you're new in your career, mission number one, goal number one is don't go broke.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that is it, right? I mean, we were talking about this earlier, but there's about 200,000 agents who wash out of our industry every single year. So whether that's door knocking, cold calling, getting leads from your team leader, buying PPC leads, everything you do is like, let me get some momentum in this business. But as you begin to get momentum, now you're looking for efficiency and impact. And so what you have to do is you have to maintain this level of, call it, energy and effort, where you're getting business coming in the door, but you're making these investments in your, what I call your savings account, your marketing savings account. So let's say the first listing video you did, you had 3 subscribers on your YouTube channel. So you put a ton of effort into that video, right? It took you maybe a couple hours to shoot it, a couple hours post-production, all that. And you did that one video. So it was, say, 10 hours of work, let's just say hypothetically, and you had 10 subscribers. That didn't reach a lot of people. Now, 5, 6 years later, you do the same amount of work, 10 hours of work, but that same amount of effort has 10x or 100x the impact. And I think that's the thing that people don't get about marketing, is that if you are not building your distribution channels, right, along the way, then your effort and your output will always be connected. You will never get that leverage. And so you have to find, if you can visualize this, like part one is do things so I make money.
Yeah.
Part two is build leverage.
Yes.
And like finding that balance where people, and what happens is experienced agents get caught up never building leverage. They get like, all they do is focus on the day-to-day, let me get an appointment today, and they never build that leverage. And the flip side is people who see you, who see Ken Pozak, who see some of the great marketers in our space, the Shane Bergmans of the world, they go, oh, I want to be like him, or I want to be like her. And they don't do the sweat equity, and they make these big investments to try to grow their brand, and they don't get the ROI, and they go shit, and they stop.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And so that balance is, I think that is to a certain degree the secret to success in real estate in terms of building your brand, is finding that balance between chat equity, if you will, and like trying to get that, or sweat equity, if you will, and then also building those high leverage points.
I couldn't agree more. We have this, oftentimes, like when I get a chance to speak on stage, I share this idea of compound interest in your brand.
Yeah.
And I tell people the same thing. I say, you know, that first year that I was creating YouTube videos, I had like 100 subscribers.
Yeah.
And I would spend 50 or 60 hours a month creating content, whether it was shorts or long form video or whatever it was, to try to create something that kind of broke through the noise, that was kind of cool and interesting, something that I actually was really proud to just share with my friends.
Yeah.
And at the end of that month, I'd look back and I would go from 100 subscribers to 110.
Yeah.
And I would look at that audience and I'm like, wait, like 13% of my audience is from India. So, and they're not likely not buying right away.
Calgary, yeah.
That's not today money.
Yeah.
But I just remember having this moment where I was feeling like giving up. And at the same time, we were doing our taxes. And I had just remembered when we first got married, like 23 years ago, it was like, if you put in $500 a month, Brad, you know, by the time you're 40, and this was, now I was 40, I'm like, damn it, I would, this is that moment
have to do this YouTube
where
thing.
I would have had all this, I would have been a millionaire at this point in time, right, had I just kept with that thing. And so I started looking at it differently. I was like, wait a second, I have 100 subscribers, now I have 110. I got 10% on my effort month after month. Now, if I asked a room full of people to raise their hand and said, hey, if I could give you 10% of your money month after month, who'd invest? And every smart hand in that room is going to raise because they know that that's incredible. And then, so when I hit 10,000 subscribers and I still put in that 50 or 60 hours of effort, I had a month where I had like 1,000 to 1,500 subscribers join our world. And that is that piece that people aren't missing. So I think oftentimes, agents go through that process, and it's pretty natural, right? Where sometimes we're solving yesterday's problems with today's efforts. Right, we're in a bit of a hole. You know, we went down a few paths we didn't do. It was a tough market. We didn't take the efforts or the actions we needed to. And then we get to that point where we're starting to at least solve today's problems with today's efforts. But we need to push through that as quick as possible in my mind, because as soon as we're solving like Jimmy Mackin's problems in the summer of 2025, I almost guarantee you, you're not going to sell yourself nearly as cheap. But today, if I need $300 for groceries, there is nothing I won't do. Like I will go rake lawns, I'll go paint garage doors, I'll do whatever I need to do to take care of my family.
One trend, and I love that, Brad, one trend that I see in real estate that is a dangerous trend that no one is talking about is right now in real estate, especially in the US, we're getting really comfortable giving away 40% to 45% to 50% of our commission to these third-party companies who all they're doing is connecting with consumers. And if we went into a time machine, you and I, and we went back 5 years, and we said, hey, yeah, sure, we'll send you a lead, but in exchange for lead, all we're gonna charge you is 50% or 40%. People would laugh us out of the room because the standard referral fee for a referral, you know, people give you 25% as an example, right? Hypothetically. And so what has happened is like, we're like a frog in boiling water. That's just kind of getting they're just turning the temperature up just a little bit, right? So the point now we're like, Like if you actually look at it, like they're going to be at 50%, 60%. And so the question that goes to my mind is, how the hell did this happen?
Yeah.
And what happened is we got really comfortable and we told ourselves a story that I'm not good at marketing, I'm not good at advertising, this is very complex, this is hard, how do I get cameras and audio, and how do I write good emails, and how do I develop good ads? We got so comfortable telling ourselves a story that we're not good at marketing, we're real estate agents, we're not good at marketing.
Yeah.
And the reality is it's our job is to connect with consumers. And what I'm seeing right now, and what I love about this industry, is I'm seeing agents now saying, you know what, the consumer doesn't win when we put someone between us and them. Real estate, we're at a point now where people don't know this, but there are more consumers using a real estate agent today than ever before in history. That's despite the advancement of technology. That's despite the advancement of AI and all these different.
And there are more alternatives. Than ever before, but still, people are choosing to work with agents.
There are discount brokers. There are
Mere
flat
listings.
fees. Yeah, there's flat fees options. You can go on a website and sell your house to a website, right? There are, which is obviously insane, but like people love that idea. You think if you're, let's say, going through an inspection and your water heater no longer works, I want you to imagine calling a website and saying, hey, can you guys help me solve this problem? As if they have any connection at all locally to a plumber who can go there the next day to solve this problem and get that deal done. Like, real estate agents are the last mile. And the problem right now is we've forgotten that. So we have gotten really comfortable with outsourcing, call it customer acquisition. And there's a basic business adage, which is, and this is from Bernadette Jiwa, is whoever is closest to the customer wins. And smart businesses, the businesses that we all admire and aspire to be like, they don't put anyone between them and their customers. Yeah. They're not part of some network. They're not part of some, distribution channel. No, they have this deep connection. And so what I love about the marketing that you do, I think it's good guidance for everyone here, whether you want to build an email list, whether you want to build a farm through direct mail, whether you want to build a YouTube channel, whether you want to have followers on Instagram that subscribe to your broadcast channel.
Keep going about me.
Right?
I'm just kidding.
Right? Whether you want to do all of those things, you have to figure out, how am I going to connect with consumers? How do I build my distribution channels so no one ever gets between me and my customers? Because that's when you have the highest leverage, and that's where you win.
Yeah, you know what? I couldn't agree more. This idea, I talk about it all the time, is, do you actually own or do you rent your business? And I believe that so many agents in this day and age are renting their business. And the problem with rent is that the rent can go up.
Yeah.
The landlord can kick you out.
The rent does go up.
It does. It always goes
up.
The
rent always goes up. And what we're seeing now, and this is why I've been championing this idea for our industry, to say, listen, I'm going to do my level best to give you ideas and strategies, because I want you to win. And I believe in the value of a great real estate agent. I think that, when consumers say all real estate agents are the same, they've never worked with a great one. And so for me, when I look at our industry, I say, okay, listen, here's the bottom line, is these companies are doing one thing and one thing only. They are, in this case, raising the cost of admission while putting on all the costs and expenses to you. They want to be asset light for Wall Street. They want to reduce their expenses while increasing their revenue. The only way to reduce their expenses is to push that towards you. So you have to have managers, you have to have ISAs, you have to have meetings, you have to do tracking. You have to do all these things to serve this sort of machine, and all the while, right, they're taking more and more and more of your commission. This is insanity. This is complete insanity, yet we've gotten really comfortable accepting this reality. And so I think when I talk to my friends who are in this industry, who are really smart entrepreneurs, the first thing they do every day is think about, how do I diversify? Like, hey, I'll use this, I'll leverage this, but I want to diversify and they're doing a good job at that piece of it. But I think the lesson for all of us in real estate is get closer to the customer. Never outsource that part of your business to anybody if you can avoid it, because ultimately that is why we exist in real estate, is to serve customers.
I think that's an amazing period at the end of this podcast. Jimmy, I do believe you are one of the most useful people, or if not the most useful follow in the industry. You've shared so much with me. You've been such a great friend to myself, and I know to many other agents. thank you for all that you do. Thanks for coming to Banff here and pouring out for an hour today. I know you could have went for hours, so thanks so much for taking some time out. And I hope you enjoyed Canada.
Yes, it was amazing.
All right, thanks a lot, buddy.
Appreciate it.
See ya. If you enjoyed this conversation, we got some more great ones coming up with other thought leaders. We'd love you to check them out, so don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you in the next episode of the Branded Podcast.